This is no dream. This is the waking, living, breathing caricature of a memory. And I'm Trixie the Golden Witch, ranting, raving, Ota Queen and Mother of Anitube. How did I get here? I remember I was watching the Sandman, and now I'm in Kentucky, reviewing the Sandman from Netflix. They did it. They made a whole season of the Sandman, and I gotta say, I'm pretty surprised on watching it that, I can't imagine a better adaptation of the Sandman. Having been born in 1991, I'm about as old as the Sandman comics, and my mom was a huge fan of the Sandman when I was a kid growing up. She had been a comic collector before, but most of her comics had been lost in a fire, so she was basically restarting her collection with the Sandman. When I was growing up, I got used to seeing this glass case full of Sandman statues and comics, and my mom basically would buy every Sandman statue that came out. Usually my dad would get it for her for a birthday present or something. So, she put a lot of value on these Sandman statues and the whole aesthetic of that universe. There were posters and stuff in our house, but all of it looked so foreboding and adult to me that I didn't investigate any of that until I actually was an adult. I finally read about half of the Sandman comics a few years ago, and I highly enjoyed it. I am a big fan of metafiction and stories about storytelling, so it's pretty much right up my alley. A lot of stuff that I like has obviously taken influence from the Sandman, so it was like the kind of thing where I felt like, oh, this was always meant for me, even before I ever read it. Now that there's a Netflix series, my mom, being the huge Sandman fan, obviously watched it day one, and she said it was perfect and that she had waited 35 years for this. And I was blown away by that because my mom's a hard person to impress. She doesn't usually like adaptations, and this is her favorite thing. So the fact that she was so down with it is why I was even willing to take the chance and actually give it a shot. Now, I don't necessarily think that I like the TV show more than the comic, only because the comic is way more dense and way trippier. Just the imagery is really insane and way more interpretive, and it feels like more is happening in the comic because of the fact that the imagery can go so far flung with itself. But at the same time, what the TV show adds in replacement of that is more nuanced emotions on the part of the characters, because of the fact that you can pack way more into a series of facial expressions than you can into a series of abstract images when it comes to fleshing out the character as a person. And I definitely think that Dream ends up being a way more likable, might not be the word, because he's still kind of an asshole, but he just feels like more of a character in the show than he does in the comic, where just grounding him through the presence of a real human being who manages to do an insane job, an incredible job of capturing this character. This actor who I had never heard of before this show, never seen his face before, and the second I saw him I thought, oh my god, that's Morpheus. And he has this really low, slow, patient voice with a thick accent that just sounds so right for the character, and I would love to hear him go into narrative voice acting or something. It's a voice you could hear reading a book in your brain, which is exactly how the dreaming should sound. So yeah, I was really impressed with the take on the character, how well it was brought to life, and pretty much everything feels one-to-one to the comics. The changes that they made are almost all cosmetic. It's incredibly minor stuff that doesn't change anything about the storytelling, and the stories are one-to-one translations of what was in the book. The only difference is imagery that just couldn't be easily realized in live action at all. They didn't go crazy with CG and effects, and when they are there, it is actually incredible. The few moments where people get dissolved or just fucking torn apart, there's a lot of imagery of people melting and stuff, and all of it looks fucking sick. To me, the spirit and the vibe of the original, while it may not be as outsider as the comics were, it still is correct. It feels like the comics feel. It feels like it's sending the same message, it's telling the same story, and it just found a way to do it that is more accessible, more clear about what's going on, less dense and hard to follow with details, and something that repackaged a familiar story in a way that I actually feel like I'll remember it better, because more of it is immediately digestible. I think the adaptation is at its best when it's handling stories from the comic that just translate naturally to film. The 24/7 episode is by far my favorite, the one inside the diner where a guy is just manipulating everyone inside with this jewel to make them be honest, and the more honest they are, the more it leads all these people in these three relationships to switch partners. Eventually I'll end up having sex with each other and killing each other because he's just like forcing out their most base emotions over and over again, basically. The way that episode plays out, it manages to feel like a complete story. It tells like every part of it exactly right and nothing is missing, whereas some episodes feel like they had to cut down on some of the broader details in order to stretch out the stuff that they could do. Particularly episode 1 kind of suffers from this because that is like one of the weirder chapters of the comic in that it's like bouncing around time and space a lot, and they made it linear and easy to follow in a way that is a little bit boring to watch, and I think it takes a few episodes for the show to kind of pick up with its pacing and be able to do those denser stories. The death episode works extremely well for this reason. Also, that like, you know, reflecting what happened in the comic was not hard to do on film. And when they start doing trippy dream world stuff, it does get really cool. Like anytime the show actually pulls out like a really fucky like camera trick or visual like way of representing a dream logic scenario, it does it perfectly. So like it never feels like it's trying and failing to do something interesting. If it wants to do something interesting, it does it well. If it can handle just being kind of normal, it stays in that normal space. So in that way, again, I don't love it as much as the comic, but I do think it tells the same story in a way that way more people will enjoy and will be able to access and understand. And you know, the undercurrent themes of the story start to bleed through as it goes, and you know, you introduce like Dream's relationship with William Shakespeare and the whole battle with Lucifer where they're literally having a storytelling battle. Like you start to get into the bones of how this is a story about storytelling, about the reasons why people tell stories, why certain stories survive, what makes stories powerful, what stories can do, and why they're necessary. All of that is explored by the show, and I think makes it excellent. So yeah, I'm a fan. I like it. I can't wait for there to be more seasons. Apparently Neil Gaiman says that they're going to adapt the entire comic, including the prequel series. So if they're going all the way, this could end up being kind of a classic show in its own right. I think that's what he wanted to do. Gaiman is somebody who's worked in all mediums at this point, and he's involved in the writing of the show, so it still feels like it is his product in a way. It is true enough to the spirit of what he was trying to do that obviously everyone working on it is trying to realize that guy's vision into something that is just as close to it as it was originally, and I think they're accomplishing that. So I'm excited about it. Thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more of me, then you should follow the channel and go in the description to all the links to all the other stuff I do, podcasts I do on other channels, my hip-hop outfit, Sucker Punch. We've got music here on YouTube and on Spotify. You could be listening right now and getting punched in the face with sick rhymes and beats. Patreon.com/GoldenWitchFire. You can get a rant about whatever you want for $5 or more. I also write articles on goldenwitch.substack.com. If you support me there, you can get exclusive articles and podcasts sometimes. And all the other stuff's in the description. Thanks again for watching, and never forget, Sandman forever.